The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Outman.
Here.
Representatives Alexander.
Here.
Cara.
Here.
Bruck.
Present.
Kuntz.
Present.
Nyer.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Bonet.
Here.
Frisbee.
Here.
Wertz.
Here.
Hersberg. Hope.
Here.
Colazar.
Here.
Andrews.
Here.
Grant. Here. Miller. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 members present. You do have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. Vice Chair Alexander moves to adopt the minutes of the July 29th meeting. There be no objection. The minutes are adopted. First up today is going to be voting on a bill we heard testimony on from the last time. Rep. Bruck moves to report House Bill 4522 with recommendation. Will the clerk please call the roll?
To report House Bill 4522 with recommendation, Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Cara.
No.
Bruck.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Nyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Hersberg. Hope.
Yes.
Colazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Miller. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 14 yeas, 1 nay, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
House Bill 4522 is reported with recommendation. Next up, we're going to be hearing testimony on Senate Bill 70. Now, I understand Representative Wertz, you're going to be testifying in place of Senator Bellino. Excellent. Please proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. And I regret that Senator Bellino cannot be here today. I'm going to read his testimony and then I'll also make a brief statement of my own. Thank you, Chair Altman and members of the committee. I'm here to testify to support Senator Bellino's bill, Senate Bill 70. This bill would amend the Michigan Memorial Highway Act to designate the portion of Highway M34 in Hillsdale County between Pioneer Road and South Pittsford Road as the Deputy Sheriff William Butler Jr. Memorial Highway. Deputy Sheriff William Butler Jr. was an Iraq War veteran who served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. After returning home from the war, he joined the Hillsdale County Sheriff's Office, where he served for 12 years. While assisting another deputy with a traffic stop on June 27, 2024, an assailant produced a firearm and shot Deputy Sheriff Butler. He was transported to the hospital and later passed away from wounds. He is survived by his wife, Sarah, 5 children, and 2 grandchildren. I'll just say that Deputy Butler grew up not far from where I grew up in Hillsdale County. You may remember this story. It made national news last June. About 2 weeks before Deputy Butler passed away, I was actually out door knocking and door knocked at a neighbor's house, another member of the Sheriff's Department, and met Deputy Butler, who was there helping his friend with a home project. I attended his funeral with my mother. His wife worked as a nurse with my mom for many years at Hillsdale Hospital. It's hard to put into words how you say something is so beautiful and tragic at the same time. But his funeral was, simply put, that an outpouring, thousands of people that came from around the state to remember Bill and his life. He was categorized as a larger-than-life human being, and that he was, and it was evident that day. This was a bill, I believe, that was passed last term, and then it failed to make it all the way through. So I thank you for your consideration, and I ask for your support.
How old was Deputy Butler when he passed?
I think he was about 50. He graduated in 1991 from Hillsdale High School.
A tragedy. I'm so sorry for your community's loss. Members, do we have questions for Representative Wertz? We're going to go to Representative Wilbrock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for presenting this. And so I guess my question is there a method to pay for it? Because it has to be paid for by private funds for the signage. Is there a program or organization in place to provide that?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Members, any other questions for Representative Wertz? I'll say none. Thank you so much, Representative. We appreciate your testimony. I'm going to read in a quick card. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill. Matt Saxton, the Michigan Sheriff's Association. Representative Wertz moves to report Senate Bill 70 with recommendation. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Altman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
Bruck.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Nyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Hersberg. Hope,
Yes.
Colazar,
Yes.
Andrews,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Miller, Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. The motion prevails.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up is going to be some presentations. Just to set the stage, there's been some troubling reports as to the state of the critical bridges here in the state of Michigan. Even reports indicating that over 100 bridges will be closed by some arbitrary date. I'm forgetting it now. And so we're going to look into that a little bit more and investigate that. We're going to start with a presentation first from Ed Noyola and Denise Donahue from the County Road Association. So if you two could proceed whenever you're ready. Oh, and it looks like Steve Perry? Perry? Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Please proceed whenever you guys are ready.
All righty. Let's give us a moment here. Okay, you ready? All right. Yeah, as you mentioned, we've been hearing a lot about road conditions and the status of those road conditions with a little sidebar conversation about bridges. But today we really want to focus on what's going on with our local bridges. And I'm not just talking about county road bridges. I'm also including city and village bridges in this conversation. With me, I have Denise Donahue, the CEO for County Road Association, and Steve Puri, who represents MML and CRA regarding engineering issues and engineering criteria. So I may have to rely on Steve or Denise from time to time, or they will correct me from time to time if I mess something up a little bit. Local roads are in serious condition, and if we don't address them now, we have no choice but to start closing bridges. That's a problem. That's a big problem that's going on right now. When you look at the serious and critical bridges that are out there right now, this slide shows you what miles of roads that we have, the top series of numbers. The bottom series of numbers show you how many bridges we have. Granted, we do have more bridges than the department, the MDOT, but there may be a little bit smaller and less technical in design, but they're still bridges and they still need to be maintained and they still need improvements. This is just the number of bridges from last year. We went up 153 bridges. Why? Because our culverts, for environmental reasons, we may have to lengthen or expand the size of our culverts. And at that point, once they get beyond 20 feet, now they're a bridge. Now we have to try to figure out how are we going to pay for this, because there is no culvert to bridge program. That falls on the locals to do that bridge, but 100% their money. And then it falls into the bridge category, or slides into the bridge category. So over the last, since 2015, it's gone up 153 bridges. So that tells you the magnitude of what's going on here and how important it is to consider culverts in anything that we do, especially when it comes to replacement. Where do all the local road bridge monies come from? There are 3 categories. Michigan, the MTF provides a half a penny of gasoline tax. And number 2 is the Michigan Local Bridge Program. So in the gas tax, it's 21 million. That half penny generates about 21 million, and the local bridge is 5 million. That's been stagnant for a while. The federal source is 25 million estimated. It went up the last couple of years, but we expect it to come back down to this original $25 million number. So that we may have a little conflict in some of our comments about how much is actually available. If you look over to the right, this is the old Bill Hamilton MTF flow chart, and you can see where those 2 pots of money are actually described in the Michigan Transportation Fund and where they're actually allocated. The half a penny began in 2000, after the entire penny was divided or was dedicated to MDOT. At one point in time, for the first 2 years after the 2017 package was approved, transportation package was approved, there was a penny carve out for MDOT bridges. After a couple of years, they decided to split the penny with the locals, and that's how we got some additional revenue. In 2015, the amount, the 5 million, it was actually 3 million, was quoted as not less than $3 million was supposed to be set aside for the local bridge program, and then it went to not more than $3 million. So that was kind of a change that was subtle, but it was meaningful as far as how much money could actually go to the critical bridge or the local bridge program. On the federal side, you'll see the $1.6 billion. That was the total allocation for the state of Michigan. But in the IIJA bill, the bridge allocation was about $167 million. 85% of that goes to the department for $142 million, and then the locals were to receive $25 million, or 15%, or $25 million for 614 agencies. Local road match, yes, there is a local road match requirement, but it's not as much as you may think. But it still needs city, village, and township contributions. Could be countywide or a township millage. Could it be done that way? Bonding, you can do it that way also. And then last but not least, which I've not heard of, the county could appropriate some of this match requirement. What is the match requirement? Construction match is 5%. The PE, the CE, and any right-of-way acquisition that's necessary, that's about 100%. That is not a negotiable number. And these local match requirements are excluding the bridge bundling program. And I think the department will talk a little bit about that. Last week when they did their presentation, they did talk about the bridge bundling program that's going on at this point right now.
Okay, so moving on to specifically local bridges, I'm going to take up with the 2023 County Road Investment Plan. This is the third one of these. We do them every other year to try to monetize what the needs are on the county road network. And so we hire an outside licensed professional engineer to do this for us. And so the 6 categories that we're looking at, you can see bridges, building and maintenance facilities, road maintenance, equipment, federal aid eligible and non-federal aid eligible roads. So take a little deeper dive. Well, here's the summary page. So our 2025 report will be out soon, not quite ready for us to release that yet. So when you look at the bridge category, this is the summary of the plan for 2023. And you can see it's at $265 million of need. Just to give us some background, in 2019, the county need for bridges was pegged at $145 million. It grew to $222 million in 2021 and $265 in this report from 2023. So that is a jump of $43 million the last time. So talk a little bit about the methodology that we use there. This is taking the known number of county bridges at their cost in 2023, and it figures what it would take to replace that bridge in 2023 dollars, amortizes it across 50 years, knowing that sometime in a 50-year period that bridge will need to be replaced. So that's the methodology that is used there. A few more bullets, I think, on that in a second. But in addition to that, there is a $1 billion, that's $1 billion with a B, $1 billion backlog of catch-up money, I guess I would say, that is needed to bring bridges into a good condition. So those are serious, critical, and closed structures. The $1 billion figure, I've rounded it to be even, but it comes from MDOT. It's been pretty consistent over the last 4 or 5 years. We've done some bridge bundles. Becky talked about those with you last week. Those made somewhat of a dent, but we're still sitting with a backlog there. The 50-year figure just assumes they're sort of all going to start from good, and this is what it costs over the 50-year life cycle. So that's where that number is. So just teasing out the county bridges again, as I mentioned, it was the figure was $43 million in 2023. It was up from the prior year, from 2021. The report, the methodology assumes a 50-year lifespan that comes out of our Uniform Accounting Practices Handbook. And that is something that's worked out between Treasury and the county road agencies. We have replacement costs come from the MDOT Local Agency Programs Bridge Scoping Cost Estimate Worksheet. And just to let you know that those sources, that this is not us imagining or making up some kind of number. This is a disciplined protocol that we follow. Replacement bridge, on every bridge that will be replaced, we assume 20% more deck area is required. That's to meet modern safety. Often the bridge is longer and therefore wider to meet the bank full width, the environmental regulations that Ed referenced earlier. All right, so back to Ed.
All right, we're looking at new federal bridge mandates, and it's going to come at a cost to the local agencies to try to figure out how to look at these new specifications for the National Bridge Inventory. These are 50 additional data points that have to be looked at every other year. By law, we have to inspect half of our bridges, and then the following year we do the other half, and we keep rotating every other year for that purpose, to collect that data to give to the department so that the department can forward that to the feds. Another issue that cropped up was this bridge loading analysis. Through the federal audit, they discovered that we did not have bridge loading analysis for all of our local bridges, and we needed to start collecting that data. In other words, or probably be sanctioned in some way, shape, or form. So all 5,868 local bridges need custom analysis in the AASHTO Bridge Rating Software. This is by 2027. So we are under the gun to come up with some revenue to do this. This is not a cheap date. This is going to require about $22 million for the first 2 years. We are working with the department to try to identify some federal funds for this purpose, but we're also looking at an account where we have some available monies, but we have to do an amendment to that statute, to the MTF, in order to allow us to use that leftover money for this purpose, for analyzing and doing the bridge loading analysis and the inspection. So we're hoping to get that bill introduced rather shortly, and then we can move along to come up with our share of that $22.5 million. And then in the out years, the third, fourth, and fifth year, we'll probably need about $21 million, and that will decide or give us a baseline for all of our bridges, including the cities and municipalities. Next, we wanted to get to the crutch of the issue here, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman. You asked us about serious, critical, and closed bridges. If you look at the chart on the left, you've got serious. We've got 323 bridges. You look at critical, we've got 59 bridges. And you can assume that those are on the verge of becoming closed bridges. What we got for closed bridges is actually 75 bridges. So you can see that we're really kind of behind the eight ball on some of those, on those specific categories. In the picture, you'll notice that's that Miller Road Bridge in Wayne County that was being held up by all these, what do you call those, Steve?
Temporary supports.
Or
There you
2x4s.
They're steel 2x4s. All right, Denise?
So this is a new slide for us, kind of a Pac-Man slide. So this looks at the requests submitted this spring, going through the regional and statewide bridge councils. Now decision-making is in process on that, so it is representing the 2028 call for local bridge projects. So MDOT puts that out much earlier this year. Counties have to turn them in sometime in the spring, and again, the decision-making. So I'll start with the middle Pac-Man there. $400 million of applications came in for local bridges here. So again, municipalities and counties. And that was the request. They are limited, every county is limited to making 3 requests into this. So I'm just basically saying the number does not represent the whole universe of need out on the roads. It is, they can only submit 3, and they have to have matching funds on hand and demonstrate that ability in order to get into that list there. The Pac-Man on the right is bigger. by 3 times, basically. This represents that billion-dollar backlog that we talked about. Those are the bridges that are critical, serious, and closed, that are all local. This is really a result of deferred work, deferred maintenance. We haven't had the money for some period of time, and so that guy just keeps on getting bigger. On the right, I actually did not consult our technical people about the name of the thing that the Pac-Man is chasing, but that little guy, that's the amount of money that's available. $50 million is what's available. Ed showed that to you earlier in this PowerPoint in terms of state and federal revenue that's available to bridges. So the need, as you can see, is just much bigger than the funds that are available to meet the need. I'm going to talk neighborhood.
He's gonna ask about that. Mhm. Oh, I'm sorry. That concludes our presentation. Denise, Steve, thank you for joining me and helping me out in this really very, very important issue.
Yes, thank all 3 of you for being here and for your presentation. This is certainly concerning here. We certainly have our work cut out for us. Now, I'll just note in our House road funding plan that we passed out of this chamber back in April, I believe, we had earmarked $500 million to our critical bridges for the next 5 years. I think it was in my portion of the package, House Bill 4187.
Yes.
$500 million for the next 5 years to our bridges. Can you just touch on what would that mean for the state of Michigan? How beneficial would that money be?
That's going to put a dent in the critical bridge program, but I got to tell you that what we're hearing from the department bridge engineer is that we need approximately 200 to 250 million a year for the next 10 years to improve the local bridge condition to 95% good, fair in 10 years. So that's how deep this problem goes. Don't get me wrong, we couldn't be happier with the allocation or the special funds that you're hoping to get for us. We're excited about it. We're looking forward to it. And I'll challenge anyone to come up with a better idea. But that local neighborhood program that you've come up with is really a winner as far as, in our eyes, as far as we can see.
I'm glad to hear that. It was a major component of our plan. We wanted to address this problem. We wanted to address it head on. Can you just tell us what have your conversations been like with our Senate counterparts?
We've had some minor conversations or very few conversations with the Senate side. It's hard to talk about anything unless we have a plan in front of us. And until we can see something in writing, we're just kind of waiting on the sidelines, waiting for something to pop up, and then we'll comment on that. But I think it would be premature right now to make any comment about what the Senate has done or not done.
Have you had discussions with Leader Brinks about this issue directly?
I've spoken to the chair of transportation, the subcommittee, and I briefly spoke to the appropriations chair, but not directly to Senator Brinks.
We'll go on now to Representative Bruck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't expecting to be first, so thank you. Thank you for being here. I had a couple questions. The first has to do with the rating, and then the second has to do with the culverts. But you had mentioned that there's a new rating scheme or analysis that has to come, and that's coming out of the federal side. Is this different than like that engineering placard or birthmark that's on every bridge, that this is new information you have to garner and have analyzed from the bridges?
There's an update to the National Bridge Inspection Standards, so that's propagated by the Federal Highway Administration. And one of the new requirements is that all the bridges are to be rated before an overweight permit could be allowed across that bridge. And that's the analysis Ed was talking about that we don't have throughout the local agencies. We don't have a local load ratings for all of the 27 legal truckloads in the state for all 5,800.
And it's not on that placard,
Oh,
that little
that
brass or
that is only
stainless steel
showing
plaque.
like 3 ratings but there's 27 total. So you have to have a model for each one so that depending on how that permit comes in, the truck may be loaded any various ways with the number of configurations of axles allowed in our state, that you have to have a model to run to see if that bridge, as it's degrading, because keep in mind, this is not a static inventory. Every 2 years they're reevaluated, and generally the condition gets worse. So the rating of the weight carrying capacity of that bridge goes down, so you run that in the model with the new load, the truck load, the live load running across it to see if it can handle the load. So that was one aspect of it. The other is there's 15 more data fields that the Federal Highway Administration is requiring, and that's new data that has to be gathered. So the department and the County Road Association, MML, are working on a proposal so that MDOT could go ahead and do that analysis and collect that, we call it SNIBI. I don't know the acronym name, but anyways, there's 50 new data fields that have to be gathered, so that's part of it, but also working up the modeling. The intent is the County Road Association has a permit, a partner that's working with our members to utilize that modeling data so that as they receive a permit application, this is all done online, it will be analyzed, and then the county would receive a notice that, yes, this truckload wants to cross one or two bridges in your county, and it's been analyzed, and the bridges can handle it. Otherwise, they have to choose another route or change their load configuration, and sometimes that's not possible. If you're hauling a big, heavy transformer, you got to haul the big, heavy transformer. You got to change the truckload somehow.
You need it. Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I had another question on culverts. So on the culverts, you have the amount of bridges in the counties, and I'm assuming every culvert case is not an MDOT bridge. These are county bridges. How many of this 58,068 used to be culverts? And a kind of a follow-up to that question is this coming from federal EPA, or is this Eagle in the state? And I know in my county there's a number of culverts that need to be replaced, and instead of spending a township $100,000, $150,000 to replace, they need $1,800,000 because now they have to make it a bridge. So how do we bridge that gap, so to speak?
Well, if there's a count, it would be hard to try to figure that out, how many actual culverts were converted into bridges. I don't have a number. I don't even know if we could find a number for that. But that's a common theme that's happened. We know historically for the past 3 or 4 years how much it's increased, how many bridges have increased. So those are probably 95% changes from culverts to bridges. Denise has some numbers here that she'll.
Well, I was just going to say, where we mentioned the 153 bridges, we have 153 more bridges on the local roster in the last 10 years. And so I, in fact, conferred with one of our road commissions this morning. I said, that sounds about right statewide. They are every year adding, it's not like there are new rivers. They are replacing culverts with bridges because, again, they're longer, wider as you do this bank full width, which accommodates the full flow of a stream and is part of an Eagle inspection. That necessitates almost always a larger culvert, and then when you hit, the 20 feet, you are suddenly a bridge with no bridge money available to you because you were just a culvert until now.
And Steve can answer the second part of that, whether it was Eagle or the federal EPA that forces us into this position.
The short answer is both, but we deal with the Eagle Transportation Review Unit, and but they're looking at increased rainfalls, more intense runoff, and when you run that through your watershed, the amount of flow that's going through a culvert requires it to be lengthened more area, and that pushes it into this bridge category. Like Ed said, you have to pay, the locals have to pay for that upgrade the first time. It then becomes eligible to be a future federal aid bridge 50 years or 60 years down the road. So that's part of the challenge is all culverts generally have to be increased in size just because of the more intense rainfalls that they're experiencing, and bridges likewise have to be lengthened. Road lengthened to carry a wider stream. Bank full width.
So my understanding, as well as single lane bridges, which we have a number of them down in Monroe County and I'm sure in Lenawee next door as well. And others, when they rebuild they're not allowed to build a single lane bridge or replace a single lane bridge with the same.
Correct. They have to pass
Go to the new
2
standards.
lanes of traffic. It may be a very low volume road, so it could be a narrower bridge. But as you get more traffic, you have to have wider shoulders. And possibly if it's in areas where there's pedestrians, non-motorized, you have to accommodate additional width for that as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
And if I didn't say it, a bridge starts at 20 feet. So we can do culverts up to 20 feet, and then anything beyond that, then it's a bridge.
And just for some clarity, that 20 feet definition from bank to bank, that is set by the federal government, correct?
Yes, that's the federal bridge eligibility minimum.
Okay, that was my understanding as well. So I just wanted to confirm that. We're going to go now to Vice Chair Alexander.
Well, actually, Bruck kind of stole most of my question there, because as a drain commissioner in Sanilac County, Michigan, I did see several cases where the environmental regulations that are pushed on by Eagle have forced us to go from what was traditionally for the last century, it's been a culvert, literally a $20,000 culvert with rivets in it. So I know it's built before 1950. And then they make you bury it deeper, 25% deeper for fish passage, and make it a 100-year flood elevation. But what they don't take in effect is the fact that downstream is only a 2.5-year flood elevation design, so it's a recipe for disaster. Have you guys been pushing back against the environmental, because bank full width was a brand new term in about 2019 that they came up with to make everything a bridge and meet it, that 100-year flood elevation. So now a $15,000 or $20,000 culvert is a $1 million bridge, and it's unrealistic knowing that the flows can't be channeled downstream. And several times as drain commissioner, I took them on. I was fairly successful at that point, but using common sense, and that's not part of the promulgated rules, not law. Promulgated rules that the department put in place to increase the size of all this for flood reasons, but moreover for fish passage.
That's a very involved question, but let me try it this way. When a road agency is going through and replacing a culvert or a bridge, they have to do a hydraulic analysis through that crossing and determine if it's holding back water. That's called backwater on a structure, and that usually dictates, okay, you got to go to a 20-foot or into a bridge size or lengthen an already existing bridge to make sure you don't back up water. But then they also want the analysis to go downstream to make sure that now this increased amount of water you're letting downstream is not impacting somebody. And now the counties have taken the position that I'm aware of, saying we have no authority to demand that this farmer or whoever that is who has that culvert downstream to upsize their culvert, we're going to cause a problem. So that's one way we've had them soften it, but that's what you have. There's basically a plug in the stream. You're removing it, and now it's all going to be thrust on the next person downstream.
What makes me concerned is the damage you're causing downstream. Who's going to be responsible for that? We want this big opening, but we don't care what happens downstream. That's not our problem. So you're causing an issue with the regulatory promulgated rules.
We have to prove that we're also not flooding anybody because of that plug now that's downstream is not holding water up downstream of our bridge, but
It's a recipe for disaster.
it is. It's
It's a
hard
challenge.
it's hard for an agency who doesn't have any control outside the road right away to do something about that new problem.
And I'll just note, Vice Chair Alexander, our office is pursuing some legislation to address that very issue that you mentioned. And we've had some good productive conversations with the department to possibly avoid that legislation moving forward. I don't know what's going to be the result of that, but we are actively looking at it because we realize that it's increasingly becoming more of an issue. We'll go now to Representative Colasar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. First of all, thank you for using a Pac-Man graphic. As a big retro video game fan, if I could see Mario and Sonic in future presentations, I'd be eternally grateful. I'm not kidding. That would be awesome. But my question actually goes, something about the Pac-Man graphic. Actually, really, I found it jarring, and I'd love to hear more about it. The limit 3 requests per county provision. I represent Western Wayne County. This is the most populous county in the state. It takes me, might make some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle a little jealous here, 20 minutes to get from one corner of my county to the other corner, or one corner of my district to the other corner of my district, 20 minutes. I think about all that population driving along our bridges, and my question is isn't that kind of a recipe for disaster when you only have limit 3 in a more populous county as opposed to less populous counties? And is there any kind of provision for emergency funding if one goes out that could potentially be pretty catastrophic?
I'll just answer the first part while Steve's thinking. The 3 bridges, they did for a while, a couple years maybe, make it 5, or they raised that limit because with the understanding that that's not a true representation of the problem when you're limiting everybody to 3 and saying they've got to have the money on hand to match it. And what I think they found was they were, the department and all of our people serve on these boards that help decide what's funded. They're analyzing, spending a lot of time looking at applications that frankly they have no chance of funding. And so I think that's why it's been put back down to 3. As far as emergency funding, I'm going to look at one of you guys.
The only way, not through the Critical Bridge Program, is there emergency funding. It would be left up to the local agency to get a SIB grant, SIB loan.
Infrastructure Bank.
To
State
borrow
infrastructure.
money to address that urgent problem that has to be reopened. But just to expand on what Denise said, yes, there's such a large number of bridges that could be applied for, and that's why the condition was put on. You have to be fiscally constrained. You know, you have to have the local match to fund all these bridges you're applying for, and that kind of limited the number. But also, of that 50 million, the anticipation is somewhere about 25% of them can be reconstructs. The rest of them are going to be preventative maintenance. Lower cost, but spreading the money, trying to keep fair bridges in fair or good condition, though, addressing those preventative things. So there's less large dollar projects that are so expensive if you let it go to a point where it becomes critical and you have to basically replace the whole bridge.
Representative Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Salmon, I had 2 questions. Could you tell what is the useful life compared to design life of a bridge? Are we getting our design life out of a bridge?
I would say we've gotten more than our fair share of years on the bridges. Steve might be able to give you a better, more technical answer, but I think we're doing pretty well. Now we're in the crisis mode where a lot of those old bridges, 50 and older, are coming around the corner, and we have to start looking at something, or we're going to have to start closing or weight restricting our bridges.
And the second part, Mr. Chair, if I may, the second part is on your AASHTO where why don't we have a standard bridge? Why don't we have a 20-foot bridge, a 25-foot bridge, a 30-foot bridge, and then they're already designed. Pick it off the shelf, put it over the creek, let's move on. I don't understand why we have to have individual designs for each bridge.
Actually, the department did develop some standard bridge packages for that very purpose. So they're on the shelf right now. Agencies can use those. The caveat on that is not all soil conditions are the same, and traffic loading, because the bridges are designed for the amount of anticipated truck traffic during the design life. So there's some individuality of what those bridges are, how they're actually designed. But anyways, they have something like, I believe it's about 30 different standard plans that agencies can go to in lieu of hiring a consultant to design it from scratch, they still have to design it for the actual foundation condition that exists at that location.
Very good. Thank you both.
And just kind of building off of Representative Kuhn's questions. So I had gotten some information from, I believe it was MDOT, and it stated that the average local bridge has been in serious condition for 9.1 years and critical condition for 10.9 years. Does that sound familiar to you guys as well?
Yes.
So my question is, so what does a bridge journey look like from fair to serious or to critical condition typically look like? I mean, what are those key points in this process where preventative maintenance could have been the most effective?
Well, there's three major components of the bridge. The substructure, what holds the beams up, the beams themselves, and the deck. So those are the main components that are looked at individually to determine what's the weakest point and how much capacity can that bridge hold considering that weakest point. So, a bridge deck could be very rough, could have holes, it could have patching on it, and that's a bad condition. By having cracks in it, the water is leaking, especially if it's concrete deck. There's going to be reinforcement steel in it, and the water's going to get down in the reinforcement steel. Part of what Ed was saying, Becky Curtis even said this the other day to you, the older bridges did not have epoxy-coated steel. So it's just raw steel. So as soon as there's cracks that go down to that steel, it degrades very quickly. So the strength of the deck starts falling apart. A lot of the older bridges, especially on the county system, use steel I-beams. It became so cost prohibitive to recoat the painting on a bridge, the amount of environmental envelope you have to put around that bridge, that basically became a cost prohibitive thing to do. So a lot of the bridges you see now don't have a lot of steel, exposed steel in them. They're going with some kind of a concrete beam or a concrete box beam so that all the steel reinforcement is enclosed in concrete with epoxy coated steel. So the beams are another weak point. The foundation, some of the bridges do not have deep piling, meaning steel piles that are driven down into bedrock or to very solid ground, and then concrete built above. They just have concrete sitting on a spread footing. They're very vulnerable to high flows where it could wash out the material around that footing, and then the substructure is the failure point. So, like I said, all three of them are rated individually to determine what's the weakest point.
Gotcha. But those are the most common deficiencies that you've seen.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for that. We will move on now to Representative Frisbee.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, serious critical closed bridges, you got the list of how many. Can we get a distribution by county of where those are?
I'm sure we could.
That'd be good to see. Thank you.
Representative Wirtz.
Thank you. Mine kind of go back to some of the questions asked by Representative Bruck. I guess I'm curious, what's the response time, do you guys track, of between Eagle and MDOT when it comes to do a bridge project in when a county puts that request in until that project can proceed?
The applications that were submitted this past spring are evaluated by a team of experts who go around and rate all those bridges. When they're awarded in the fall, the expectation is that they will be let for construction 3 years out. So that's why they're taking applications for 2028 right now.
Wow.
So
Okay.
And if they're selected,
That's
that's the size of the middle Pac-Man here chasing the little bait. if they're selected. It could be, you could be waiting for 10 years.
Yeah, you don't always get it the first go-around, but it doesn't take that long to design it, for one, but it does take time to do the environmental clearance, and if there's right-of-way needed, those types of issues. But that's been the typical pattern, that it takes about 3 years. Typically, the counties are not going ahead and designing a project until they know they have funding.
Okay, and then, so when it comes to that, I guess, and when you mentioned, Ed, about whether it's a tube and whether it's a bridge, so is that MDOT making that decision, or is Eagle making that decision?
Through the permit process for the bridge project, Eagle will make that decision on what size or how much we have to upsize.
Do they have engineers making that decision, or are these just environmentalists?
Yes, they have engineers on their staff as well.
Okay. I guess my other question here is, if the current culvert or bridge, and I think of an example around the corner when I grew up, there wasn't a bridge there for a long time. And then when they finally put a bridge in, it's a dirt road. It's a 2-lane bridge on essentially a 1-lane road. It is the St. Joe River, so it ebbs and flows. But it seems like a monstrosity of a bridge, and the cost of that to put in on a dirt road that is very rarely used. I mean, who makes that call, I guess? And is this the best use of our funds, or when a culvert or something smaller could be used, why aren't we going that route?
Want me to handle that one?
Yep, I don't,
Federal Highway Administration, using AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, they put together standards on how wide a bridge should be based on the amount of traffic. So there are some minimums that MDOT follows on how narrow, how many lanes. It's generally going to be a 2-lane passage. It could be a narrow 2-lane where it's only maybe got 2 extra feet on each lane, so you might have 28-foot total of width between the guardrails. But that's not enough for, if you have any pedestrians walking along there, to feel real well. If 2 cars are passing and you have that narrow width and all you have is a barrier, or you jump. But then higher traffic volume areas, they're going to require wider shoulders, usually about 4-foot shoulders. So there's a cushion between the lane and the outer lane line and the barrier. But then if you add, I know you're talking of something more rural,
It's a
but
dirt road.
yeah, that has been an ongoing concern from a lot of counties, that we've got this narrow 2-track road and we have to put a 2-lane
You put
ride.
$1 million bridge on
Yes.
a road that is probably alone not worth $1 million. It's just, it seems like a disparity of, and in somewhat unfunded mandates to counties, right? Like if Eagle is enforcing this, or from the federal level, then why aren't they helping with the funding for it to make it attainable, instead of putting that on the backs of rural communities who, I mean, for most of my life, you just went around that mile and there were roads to do so. So my last question is, do you think if the funding goes through, do we have the workforce and the ability to do these bridge projects here in Michigan? Are we going to need to recruit or train more bridge builders?
I think that's probably an answer or a question better suited for the MIDA, for the Road Building Association, the road group, not necessarily us. All we're providing you is what the need is and how big the need is. That's better suited for MIDA, not necessarily for us.
Representative Grant, do you still have a question?
I'll make it a quick one. This is just for my education and understanding. I know when we talk about weight restrictions on the highway, Michigan, as a state, has much higher restrictions than other states. I understand about the axles and all of those things, but I'm wondering when it comes to bridges, is the same thing true? Do we have higher weight restrictions compared to other places? And I'm also wondering how that plays out when it comes to maintenance and the cost of maintenance.
Yes, if the heavier loads are allowed on the roads, they're allowed on the bridge unless the bridge is posted with a reduced rating. If it exceeds the standard state law, then an individual permit has to be considered by the road agency if they're going to allow that load that's heavier than state law allows to not only pass the road, but if there's a bridge along the way, can the bridge handle it? So that's what I was getting at on the load analysis for that actual bridge, because the bridge, because of the wear and tear, like we talked about the various that degradation that could be occurring on that bridge, it has to be analyzed against the last inspection report to say, can this deck really handle that overweight truck? So yes, all of that adds to more wear and tear on our bridges when we have higher loads, and meaning that there will be more maintenance work that will be needed on that bridge, and ultimately it's going to impact the life expectancy, although the bridges in Michigan have to be built to a higher standard. I think Becky Curtis covered that in her presentation, that they have to be built to a higher standard than other states because our state allows higher loads.
Chair, can I have a quick follow-up question? And you may not be able to say this off the top of your head, but I'm just wondering, once again, for my education, I'm new to this, what does that comparison look like? So when we say, yes, we're going to see heavier loads, do you have a range of like how much heavier, and I know that this will vary based on the specific load, but is Michigan just a little higher, or is it a significant amount?
The basic semi truck, which is a 5-axle vehicle, is about 80,000 pounds. We allow up to 11 axles for 160,000 pounds.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're getting short on time, so I'm going to fire off a few questions just to wrap this all up. And I know you touched on this in your presentation, so sorry to be a little redundant, but could you just reiterate to the committee here, what is the estimated cost to bring all of Michigan's bridges to a state of good or fair condition?
That would be spending between $200 and $250 million a year for the next 10 years. And that would get us up to 95% good. Currently, we are at 85%, according to the department.
Okay. And then, well, let me ask you this. How does Michigan's bridge funding compare to other states with a similar climate, similar freeze-thaw cycles? Are we comparative to those other states in terms of bridge funding?
I personally have not done that analysis, but I gladly would look it up for you.
Okay. So again, here I'm looking at some of that information that MDOT had provided us. MDOT is estimating that Michigan currently has 280 bridges on the state trunk line system rated poor, with over 100 bridges at risk of closure by 2035. How does that compare with other years? Do you have that information?
No.
Nope. Have to get that for you.
Okay. Could you provide specific examples and timelines for bridges that have been closed for an extended period of time, along with maybe some reasons for their closure as well?
Well, obviously, the closure is for the categories that Steve mentioned. If they fall below a certain level, they will be degrading. They'll go into weight restrictions, and if they continue to degrade, they'll lower the available weight that can go over the bridges. And then at that point, if they go to that beyond that point, they're going to be closed.
Do you have any egregious examples from some of your members of bridges that have been closed for an extraordinary amount of time?
There were some that were in the bridge bundling program. Actually, it was on the state appropriation that addressed closed bridges. And some of those bridges, the county and the regional committee did not support closing or reopening those because they just don't serve anybody. So kind of following along the question before, it doesn't make sense to replace a bridge that there's nobody living along that road. Those were, because they were in the closed category, they were funded. But there is a list of how many bridges. The department has put together a list of how long the bridges have been closed by category of aging. So we could get you that information on the county system, or the local system, I should say.
Yeah, that would be terrific. And just finally, and I think I know the answer to this, but just the mass closure of these bridges is funding the primary reason for this. You know, kind of dovetailing off of Representative Wirt's question, like, is the workforce available? Has there been any issues with that? Or is this purely a funding issue that we're currently situated in?
I don't think workforce has been an issue. I think they've been handling, when we did the bridge bundling program, that included a lot of bridges. There's lots of bridge companies around the state of Michigan. I think they look forward to working on our bridges, and we're glad to have them. I've not seen any numbers that the bridges are not being addressed because of workforce.
Now, in terms of bridge construction, are there techniques or materials that could speed up this process that you guys are aware of?
Yes, and there are some that are have been experimented and shown good success, where beams are built off-site and then just brought into place very quickly. Becky Curtis covered in her presentation some of the new abutment fill, lightweight fill that's stacked up, and those bridges can go in rather quickly versus traditional ways of driving, piling down, pouring concrete in successive layers, those types of efforts. Some bridges you just have to do that, like the Gordie Howe Bridge. I'm sure they went down and drove piling and poured a whole lot of concrete up there because of the severity of the flows through that river, and plus the importance of that structure.
Yeah.
Are there an average bridge construction time? Because I've noticed that these projects take an extraordinary amount of time. I'm talking multiple months. And if you're a business that is unfortunately situated on the other side of a closed bridge, that could be devastating for your business. Is there a average time frame for bridge construction, to your knowledge?
There's not an average bridge, for one thing, sure. But generally the common bridge, 2-lane bridge on a county system, it's probably going to be about a 3-month window of time. Remove the old, repair the stream, do all the stream prep so that you don't have to work under the bridge after it's built. A new bridge is built. It takes, especially if you have concrete, it's got cure time in there. Weather delays, those types of things. But from my experience, it's generally been about a 3-month effort.
Okay. And Steve, you had mentioned something earlier in your presentation about matching funds. How much of an issue is that? Is that matching fund requirement, is that quite an impediment to getting these projects done?
Well, the 5% construction match has not been an issue, but the design and construction engineering costs are just that involves testing and surveying and also the daily inspection of making sure the contractor is doing everything they're supposed to be doing. That's a cost. The agencies bear that because they know they can't afford that bridge without the outside grant money from either the state or the federal government. So I haven't heard that being the impediment of getting projects done. It's been more, the bigger chunk of money comes from the state or federal government.
Okay. And the reason I ask is, historically speaking, with our traditional road infrastructure, that has been a major impediment, that local match requirement. I've talked to numerous townships, many of which that I represent, and they just don't have the tax base. They might even have a millage for roads, but they just really don't have the tax base to accumulate enough to complete a lot of these projects. And so that's why we're so adamant in our road funding package that we passed. It's House Bill 4230 is the Neighborhood Roads Fund. I misspoke earlier and said it was 4187. It is 4230, and what we did with that bill was we earmarked that $375 million from the corporate income tax, $500 million of which will go to the bridge program, and for any locals that are tapping into that neighborhood roads fund, that eliminates that match requirement for that portion of their dollars. And so, really, really hoping that part of the plan moves forward and can be a huge benefit to our local communities. I think that's really everything I have for you guys. I really appreciate your testimony up here. We certainly value our local road commissions, and we want to partner with you guys the best we can, and we appreciate you representing them so well. So thank you for your presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Up next, we have Rebecca Curtis from MDOT here to present. Rebecca, welcome, and please begin whenever you're ready.
So I do have a lot of slides, just the overview of MDOT, but if you could give me an idea about how much time you'd like me to shoot for, and I will tailor to meet your needs.
I believe we have about 25 minutes left of the entire committee.
Okay.
If that.
So I will breeze through and then hopefully turn it over for questions at the end to make sure to save for the questions. So I am Becky Curtis. I'm the Chief Bridge Engineer for MDOT. I have a slide in here for funding. That was a request before. I'm going to have a few little graphics to help follow along. So a lot of what we do is regulatory. It's a federal requirement that we have to follow. And so I've got the little regulatory symbol. We have a lot of best practices, innovations I want to highlight. And then one of the primary focuses that we have in the department is extending our service life and reducing costs. And so I'll try to highlight which activities are related to those. The Blue Water Bridge is in my bureau. We have a plaza expansion going on right now. It's not really bridge funding. It is completely funded by the tolls and duty-free revenue and lease payments from the Blue Water Bridge. But this will hopefully help alleviate congestion issues at that international crossing. The other topic I want to hit on is the bridge bundle. It was kind of mentioned by my CRA friends earlier. So MDOT helped come up with this idea of a bridge bundle program. The intent was if a large amount of funding was available to dedicate towards local bridges, MDOT could apply, our expertise and our resources to help our local agency partners deliver that funding in order to address the large backlog of local agency bridges that need to be addressed. We actually have 3 phases now. We had a pilot phase, which was about 19 bridges. We have a phase 2 bundle, which is currently under construction. And we have a phase 3 bundle. It's actually multiple projects, so we've started splitting it up into smaller projects so that more contractors were available to bid. I'll just get on to the benefits. So the benefits of bridge bundling, the one that I'm most proud of is that MDOT, on behalf of our local agencies, submitted a grant application for bridge bundling, and we were successful. We obtained $34 million of additional federal aid for the bridge bundle program. Part of it was because we were able to cite the bridge bundling as an innovation, and that was part of the reason why it was selected. The other benefit of the bridge bundling program is it allows the inclusion of large or complex local agency bridges that are otherwise difficult to fund locally or through the local agency bridge program. On the slide that CRA showed, they talked about, the issue of just funding a large population of bridges with only $50 million a year. But one of the structural components of that funding is that $50 million is actually divided out by the 7 regions. And so each region has only a portion of that funding. if a bridge exceeds the amount of funding that that region has, that local owner has no recourse to actually fund that bridge. And so there's a large population of bridges that are too expensive to be funded currently ever in the local bridge program. And I mentioned that we're providing the expertise on delivering the Bridge Bundle program, which allows local agency staff to focus on other priorities. And so far, the program to date, because of the funding that we've had, has been able to avoid a local match. For the pilot, we did a design build delivery, and that we figured saved $600,000 to $800,000 versus a traditional delivery because of the accelerated delivery. Our program bids to date have been significantly under the scoping estimates. They've all been delivered on time and under budget. That funding was additional funding, and so it didn't impact the local agency bridge program. And our low bids have been a mix of small and large contractors. So going to how MDOT manages our bridge program overall, bridges are long-lived assets, and so they're going to cycle through this process a few times. We have inspections, which we have to do every 2 years or more frequently if the condition drops. The inspection is going to identify maintenance items that we're going to perform in order to increase the service life and make them last longer. Once it gets beyond maintenance, we're going to move into asset management or project selection. It'll then go to design and finally construction. So for inspection regulations, as mentioned, according to the National Bridge Inspection Standards, the state has to inspect or cause to be inspected all of the federally identified bridges in the state. And the important thing is that non-compliance of any owner could impact the obligation authority for the entire state. How you measure bridge conditions, this might be a little confusing because some people refer to anything under 20 feet as a culvert, but honestly, a culvert is a type of structure, and there are culverts that are greater than 20 feet, and so they are federally a bridge, but they look like a pipe. So here's our pictures that we like to help explain how we measure bridge conditions. The deck is the surface that the cars drive on, the superstructure carries the deck, and the substructure transfers all of those loads back into the soil. And a culvert works similarly, except it's one integral structure that carries the soil and the vehicle traffic. So here's some photos of good condition bridges. A deck, a superstructure, and a substructure. They may be candidates for routine maintenance, which is rather inexpensive, about $50 a square foot. And then you get to fair condition as they deteriorate. You might see some minor cracking, some minor rusting, and in that substructure picture, there's some efflorescence. And rehabilitation, so to either extend that life in fair condition or return it to good condition, that's going to be about $200 a square foot. Next, the bridge will continue to deteriorate. We'll get into poor condition. You might have significant deficiencies in the deck, the superstructure, the substructure. When you jump up to a replacement candidate, the price goes up to about $725 a square foot. And then even worse, if you don't take action, then the bridge will continue to deteriorate, and it might be a candidate for closure. They would need emergency repairs or closure until a more permanent repair can happen. And then this was also mentioned, so I'll just briefly talk about it. The inspection program, the National Bridge Inspection Standards, actually has like 3 categories. So there's the inspection that's going out and looking at the bridge. There's the inventory, so that's where we maintain all of the condition information, but then also some descriptions about the bridge, its classifications. And then load rating, so hopefully you also like cartoons as well as video games. This is a cartoon that many bridge engineers have in their cubes. How do you know the load limit of the bridge? You drive bigger and bigger trucks over the bridge until it breaks, and then they weigh the last truck and rebuild the bridge. So obviously not how it happens, but we do use engineering analysis to identify the largest truck that can cross the bridge. And why that's important, for 2 reasons. One, as mentioned earlier, Michigan does have some of the largest legal loads in the country. That's one of our legal vehicles in the bottom. But then also permit vehicles are allowed to cross over bridges. They might be carrying important industrial components. Things are indivisible. They're going to be heavier than legal loads, and an owner has the ability to allow that permit truck to cross the bridge as long as they can do the analysis to show that it's safe. And As mentioned, we do have to follow the federal requirement for the new specification for the National Bridge Inventory, and it's due by the end of 2027. Some of what was mentioned by CRA earlier is that we have to have a field in that inventory which identifies what kind of permit load can be carried by that bridge. And so that requires the local owner to be able to do an analysis for that specific bridge. And because of that is why we need to undertake the program of reload rating all of the bridges to meet this new inventory requirement. So we do have, every local owner already has load ratings for their legal loads. That's a requirement. We would have been in non-compliance a long time ago if that hadn't happened. The issue is the permit vehicles do not have a load rating right now. So we're working with CRA to come up with a solution to this problem. It is a large effort to redo all of those load ratings. MDOT has offered to assist by providing contracts with consultants to do the work, managing the consultants, and providing our expertise and review of those consultants. We're working with CRA right now to identify the funding that's going to be utilized. We have about 2/3 of the funding. I know CRA has recommended changes to the Movable Bridge Fund to allow the surplus to use that, but without funding for the rest of the amount, it would have to come off of the top of the local program, which with the local need, obviously that's what we would like to avoid. I just have a few slides on bridge preservation. I'll get mostly to the condition topics because that seemed to be what was most interesting to the group. These slides are just showing some of the ways that MDOT takes action to extend the service life of our bridge, epoxy deck injections with the carbon fiber wrapping. We respond to emergency response when bridges are hit in order to try to get traffic back open as soon as possible. We will do localized repairs to make sure that we don't have to restrict traffic because of deterioration. And then we get to our asset management where we're facing challenges with keeping up with our bridge deterioration rates. This is a graph of our unit costs. So we have to monitor how much it costs to replace a bridge. This is going to be only a fraction of the cost because it's a federal standard we have to meet. It doesn't include PE. It doesn't include engineering costs, a lot of the things that go into program. But you can see the rate of increase is very steep. So bridge replacement costs increase about 13% a year from 2018-ish to about 2023, which is significantly greater than any funding would have increased. This is a slide of the trunk line bridge condition. The green is good, yellow is fair, the red is poor, and at the top is that sliver of severe. So those are going to be the 3 or less. Those are the ones that are at risk of closure, and you can see that we're slowly losing the amount of good bridges, and those fair bridges are building up to sort of a large cliff of needs that we're going to be facing soon. We take our condition and we look in the future with the loss in condition that we're projecting, and we're trying to identify how many times is traffic going to be impacted. That's a critical finding, shoulder, lane, or bridge closure, and we expect those to double over the next 10 years at MDOT because of the loss of condition. And another way of looking at it, and I think one of the questions was, what's the life of a bridge? Design life is usually in the bridge world taken to be what loading you're applying to it, like how much is traffic growing. And we use the term service life to indicate how long a bridge can be used before it would have to be closed. Historically, bridges are retired around 53 years of age across the nation. And so you could take that to be the historic service life, that a bridge lasts slightly longer than 53 years. Normal service life is what we would assume now, that we have better design standards, better details, better materials, and we're also doing preservation. And so MDOT would expect a new bridge built today to last 75 years. And then, of course, you can get enhanced service life if you use more expensive special materials, it is possible. And so 100 years is sort of the national like gold standard for extended service life if you're willing to invest the funding for it. And so the big challenge you can see in this chart on the trunk line system is that because most of our bridges were built in the construction of the interstate and the freeway system, is that, like 2/3 of our inventory is already older than the 50-year average national service life. And so in the next 10 to 20 years, they're going to be beyond even the 75-year service life. And that's where our bridge predictions of bridge closures are coming from. We are unable to wait 20 years and then fund all of the bridges that will be in poor condition when they are well beyond the service life of the years that they were designed for. To look at that, we have done a bridge closure risk analysis, and this is our 10-year chart. It's about 100 of the federally defined bridges. There's more if you include the non-NBI definitions, so those culverts under 20 feet and pedestrian bridges. We've ranked them. The color coding is blue is the lowest priority to red being the highest priority. Trying to identify what impacts there are to communities. That is including the economic impact, the detour length, and the access to essential services like hospitals and emergency services. We're going to use this to aid in prioritizing our limited resources because we know we cannot keep up with the deterioration and the age of bridges. So those are kind of the highlights of the closure. I have a few more design slides, but I know we're short on time.
Yeah, no, I think that is a perfect spot to pause and ask some questions. I'll start with a really brief question here. So according to MDOT's 5-year plan, 2029 is expected to be the lowest bridge funding year in more than a decade, with less than $132 million allocated to bridge improvements. Why is that the case?
So a part of it is that the end of the IIJA bridge funding, bridge-specific funding, has ended, and so 29 doesn't include the additional bridge-specific funding. Additionally, some of it is projects having moved up. We have, at MDOT, we have what's called our big bridge inventory. Those are really large and complex bridges, and we have to reduce spending on our statewide pot of bridges in order to move funding to work on those. So it'll move like from year to year. But
Okay.
in general, it's not just the funding, but also the fact that our projects are more expensive than they used to be. And so we do less bridge projects with even the same amount of funding.
Sure. And I'm going to ask you a question that I had previously asked our county road folks, and that is, our funding for bridges here in the state of Michigan, how does that compare with some of the states that have that similar climate, that similar freeze-thaw cycle? Are we comparative to those states?
I think it is challenging to identify specifically how much they're spending in bridge money without asking them. I do know that MDOT has a similar focus on preservation as a lot of those states. Mm-hmm. However, we're doing a lot less replacement when I talk to my counterparts in other states because we don't have the funding. So we're trying to focus on the same mix of fixes as those other agencies, but I do believe that our estimate of only replacing 8 MDOT bridges a year is lower than most of our counterparts.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next question. Do you talk with your counterparts frequently? You know, particularly our neighboring states. I'm talking like Department of Transportation. Do you guys, have discussions, talk about, what's working for your state, what's not working?
Yep, all the time. There are 3 members of MDOT who are on the Committee of Bridges and Structures. I'm actually the chair for the Asset Management Committee, and so me and then about 20 other state counterparts, we are trying to work on advancing asset management across the nation and identifying best practices. So we have bi-monthly meetings to discuss what everyone's doing, challenges and successes.
Okay. We're going to go now to Representative Cara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. My question is, how long is the average grant application in terms of pages for bridge funding?
For the federal grant program?
For this local bridge bundle, this Phase 3 grant application.
So the grant application for the bridge bundle, MDOT put that together and submitted. I've read it, but I don't remember. I mean, I helped write it. I think it was about 20 pages, but I could get you the actual grant application.
Okay, and then do you know how long it takes on average for a bridge to get approved for when their applications they seek?
It took a very long amount of time. We have a grant application in that we have not heard the response from right now.
Okay, and is it possible that if they're waiting years, that the bridges may go from fair to poor, and then it becomes more expensive because of the delay in terms of getting approved from a grant?
So that's the federal grant program, and I have no control over the timeline. But yes, it is possible that.
And my last question, if I may, do you think that the locals might just prefer to have more money to decide how they are going to spend it, at what time, and not have, this application process and wait years to hear back in terms of what they're going to get when?
The bridge bundle program was just supposed to be an additional mechanism to supplement the local bridge program, because not every agency might have the employee resources to oversee and manage their bridge construction. The local bridge program also has an issue where it can't fund large projects right now because of the cap on how much money can be spent. So I think that, and especially bridge preservation, for example, that is much better delivered by the local agency through the local bridge program. And so they sort of supplement each other. And then the federal grant application was kind of like a bonus. It's not something that normally happens. I don't even know. I mean, it was an opportunity in IIJA that MDOT took advantage of. But the normal local bridge process, if maybe you're getting that confused with the bridge bundle, that is a 1-year selection timeline. The local bridge program is.
And if they don't get it, they're going to apply the next year.
And if they don't get it, they'll apply
Thank
next
you.
year. Yep.
Okay, we have 3 more questions that we're going to try to fit in, so we're going to try to be brief with both question and answer. We'll go to Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Becky. Thank you for your presentation. I think this slide that we landed on here at last is what kind of stuck out to me about bridge closure risk analysis. Since our counterparts over on the approach side haven't passed a comprehensive subcommittee budget on transportation yet, can you kind of expand on what forecasted bridge closures is going to look like statewide?
Yep. So this is trunk line only analysis. So as CRA discussed, they already have bridges that are closed. These are trunk line bridges. So they're either bridges that are over a freeway or they are a freeway bridge themselves. And currently MDOT does not have the funding. Even if we switch to a full replacement program and stop doing any asset management, we don't have the funding to address all 100 bridges. And that's why we're doing the analysis, so that we can identify what the impact to the communities are, which ones would be hardest hit, the longest detour lengths, things like that. So we can work with whatever funding is appropriated to us. We can work to mitigate harm, but we've done individual bridge analyses here that will show, a community may no longer have their 5-minute response time for emergency services with the loss of that bridge. There could be loss of jobs, things like that, that they're detailed out by bridge, and we're using this research in order to help, steer our decision making.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one more brief question. Representative Wirtz.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And my question is, I had it earlier, and then I'm glad you spoke on it, what you're doing with epoxy and some of those things to repair and maintain current bridges. Is there any way, seems like we're a bit always in triage mode, like we're having to deal with the worst and the most critical. Is there a way in which we could save money and lessen bridge closures if we actually looked at those that are maybe in that minimum repair and start addressing those and maintaining the existing structure that we have and doing that repair work to continue and not have to do a full replacement?
Right, so that's basically the tenet of asset management. It's something the Transportation Asset Management Council has been advocating. It's a process that MDOT does use. And I think the issue that we have is preservation is sort of new to the bridge community. And so when the interstate system was put in, federal aid wasn't eligible to be spent on maintenance or preservation. And yet all of those bridges are still out there. And so I have inherited a population of bridges where maintenance was not done, until the early 2000s when MDOT started adopting asset management. And then we aggressively pushed to federal highway to be allowed to spend federal aid to do preservation, which we now have. But those bridges experienced deterioration. They had leaky joints that caused deterioration of the substructure in all those years where either preservation wasn't a topic of the industry or it wasn't an eligible federal expense. And so we have the bridges that we have now. It's one of the reasons we expect a longer service life because we're doing those best practices, but it doesn't fix the issues that we've now inherited on this older population.
Okay, we're going to have to end it right there. We are out of time. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here. I hope we'll have you back at some point and talk about the success we're having in our bridge construction. With that, Representative Bruck moves to excuse absent members. There being no objection, the motion prevails. There being no further business before the committee stands adjourned.